stand tall at this mic. My name is Elaine Kaplan. I'm the Executive Director of the Canadian Associates of Ben-Gurion University of Manila. I welcome you here tonight, a beautiful Montreal spring night. Thank you for coming out and not being discouraged by that snowfall. I would like to start by saying that all of us at CABGU are delighted to be co-sponsoring this event with the Concordia's Azrieli Institute of Israel Studies. This is really an honor. I'd like to thank Chava Nicoleni, the director of the Institute, also Jennifer Solomon and Michelle Richmond for making everything go so smoothly. It's really a lot of work and we do appreciate it very, very much. I'd like to acknowledge the presence of CABGU's president, Larry Nashin, over here, and next to him, Robert Ellman, immediate past president. Robert is also the chair of our Kindle Your Imagination lecture series, of which tonight forms a part. Thank you for being here. My first introduction is going to be our Consul General, Zeev Nigo-Coleman, who has been in Montreal and become very well known for about a year and a half, I think. Consul General Coleman has been posted in many cities, including Prague, Tokyo, and Paris, where he was named Chevalier des Arts et des Lettres. Having extensive skills in 6 languages, he is a perfect fit for our multicultural city. Consul General Coleman has provided enthusiastic support for tonight's event since it was first conceived 1 year ago.
Hello, good evening, bonsoir. It's always a pleasure to attend your events, Elaine, and also to be here at Concordia at the Azrieli Institute for Israeli Studies. Tonight we're going to be sharing opinions about the legacy of Moshe Sharett, and I can tell you that his legacy lives on. It lives on not only because we have a Sharett Hall in the Foreign Ministry, and not only because every city in Israel has, of course, a high school or a street or something named after Moshe Sharett, but seriously, his legacy lives on because Israel today has embassies and consulates in 106 places around the world. It has diplomatic relations with more than 160 countries, including our neighbors, Egypt and Jordan. But we can also argue that his legacy perhaps does not live on because Israel is still not at peace with all of its neighbors. We do not have diplomatic relations with all countries around the world. And what you're going to hear tonight dates back like a long time ago, since the creation of the State of Israel, the argument between the Bitronistim and Misrad HaChutzim, or I don't know how Moshe Sharett is going to address it. But you know, this is something that exists in many countries. You know, the difference between the security aspect and the diplomatic aspect of national security, not only in Israel. You can look at the arguments in the United States and in other places around the world. But it's fascinating to see the origins of this conflict in our country. And this is the little irony of history that we're doing this hosted by Ben-Gurion, right? I have to say that I am the Shadchan. We first met Dr. Kaplan at the consulate about a year ago, so I thought about this shidduch. So tonight we're all friends of Moshe Sharett, David Ben-Gurion, and we're certainly all friends of Israel. So I thank you all for coming. I thank you for coming all the way from Israel, and thank you to all the organizers. Have a wonderful evening.
You're going to hear some very fascinating speakers tonight, and in order to keep the flow of the evening, I thought I would tell you a bit about them, read you their bios before we start. So we're going to start in order of appearance with Dr. Neil Kaplan. Neil, a native of Montreal, received his BA and MA from McGill and Carleton universities and his PhD from the London School of Economics in 1973. From that date until his retirement in 2008, he taught full-time in the Humanities Department of Vanier College, with occasional courses for the Political Science and History departments at McGill, Concordia, and Queens. He is the author of numerous scholarly articles and 8 books, including, here are 4 titles: Palestine Jewry and the Arab Question, Futile Diplomacy, The Israel-Palestine Conflict, Contested Histories, and Negotiating Arab-Israeli Peace, Patterns, Problems, Possibilities. Since retiring from the classroom, he has held an affiliate position in the History Department of Concordia University, and he is scholar in residence at Bangor College. He is currently researching 2 historical projects. One is a critical study of missed opportunities for Zionist Arab and Israeli-Palestinian peace. And the second project, of course, an annotated English translation of Moshe Sharett's personal diary, 1953 to 56. And of course, Moshe Sharett, you're going to hear more about him tonight. Neil Kaplan. Okay. I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Abi Bareli. Abi is visiting us here from Ben-Gurion University. He is a researcher at the Ben-Gurion Research Institute for the Study of Israel and Zionism at the University in Sde-Boker. His book, Authority and Participation in a New Democracy, was published in 2013. Another book, Mapai in Israel's Early Independence, 48 to 53, received the Ben-Zvi Prize in 2008. In 2011, his book, Israeli Republicanism, was published by the Israel Democracy Institute. He is the editor of the multidisciplinary Hebrew journal, Iyunim B'Tkumat Israel. They actually have to do all this. I only have to read. Okay, Dr. Csaba Nicoleni. Csaba Nicoleni received his PhD from the University of British Columbia in 2000 and was recruited by Concordia University in the same year. His research focuses on the comparative study of political parties, electoral systems, and legislatures in post-communist democracies, as well as on the political systems of Israel and India. He was former English co-editor of the Canadian Journal of Political Science, served as co-administrator in the Faculty of Arts and Science, and as chair of the Department of Political Science between 2011 and 14. And of course, he is currently the director of the Azrieli Institute of Israel Studies. He has published extensively in comparative politics journals and has authored 2 books. He was a visiting professor at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, the Center for European Studies at the Australian National University, and Sciences Po in Grenoble. He is currently the recipient of a Lady Davis Visiting Fellowship at the Hebrew University and a Visiting Research Fellowship at the Research School of the Social Sciences at the Australian National University in 2015-16. Thank you.
Come with artifacts and props. Really a pleasure to be here, and I have a kind of an extra tingle if this is happening at all because it almost didn't happen. And thanks to oh, good idea. I just want to express my excitement and happiness that this is happening because there were moments where this almost didn't happen, and I'm really pleased that the partners managed to pull it off and pull it together at a time when somebody backed out. This was meant to coincide with the 50th commemoration anniversary of Moshe Sharett's death in July 1965. That would have made it last July. We are a little late, but I think in this business it's called close enough. Moshe Sharett was born in Ukraine in 1894 at the age of 12. His parents brought him to Ottoman Palestine in 1906, and as many of you know, he served as Israel's first foreign minister from 48 to 56, and his second prime minister briefly while Ben-Gurion took a partial retirement in 1954-55. In the pre-independence years, he, together with Dr. Chaim Weizmann and David Ben-Gurion, formed the triumvirate of the leadership of the Zionist movement. On a number of occasions, Moshe Sharett, as some of you may testify later in private conversations, did come and visit Montreal, and he developed a number of connections with community leaders here. In fact, the name of the Consul General of Israel during this period had a similar name to our current Consul General, but I don't believe there's any relation. Yosef Nevo was the Montreal Consul General during the period that Sharett was Prime Minister. Are we having trouble with the audio? A little closer? Not too close? For over 2 decades, Sharett worked particularly closely with David Ben-Gurion. He shared many common goals with him, but occasionally and increasingly they clashed, and that's the subject of tonight's guest speaker's presentation. He left office under very clouded and stressful circumstances in June 1956, and he was replaced by Ben-Gurion's hand-picked choice for Foreign Minister, Golda Meir. Sharett died of cancer in 1965. I'm going to speak a little bit about my own path to becoming a moderate Sharettist. To become a Sharettist is, I think the term was coined by Moshe Dayan, not meaning to make it a complimentary phrase. He was critical of Sharett, and to be a Sharettist was a put-down, but proudly people who see themselves as espousing a less militaristic line would say that they are Sharettists, or people who respect and appreciate the qualities of Moshe Sharett. So I'm a moderate Sharettist. I discovered Moshe Sharett in 1970, and it happened through a weird connection of accidents. This magazine called The New Middle East came out in March 1970, and in it was an article by a political scientist whose name I had heard, Michael Breacher. And this was an excerpt of a chapter that he later wrote in his book, classic book called The Foreign Policy System of Israel. And this prelude, comparing Ben-Gurion and Moshe Sharett in terms of their worldviews, became a seminal reference point for scholars after 1972 up to today's scholars for the ways of looking at the differences of approach in Israeli foreign policy. I don't know if he's in the room. Is Michael here yet?
Not yet.
Not yet. We have been waiting. Michael was intending to come, and I hope we'll get a chance to see him tonight, and we could salute his original contribution, because this circle comes around full. Last night, Michael Breacher met Kobi Sharett for the first time after interviewing his father in 1960 while Kobi was serving in Russia. So they never met, but here we have a great reconnecting of some of the strands of the story of Moshe Sharett and Montreal.
Can I interrupt for a second? Didn't Levi Eshkol, in 1966, Levi Eshkol was the prime minister, not Golda Meir.
Sorry, we're not talking about prime ministers. We'll keep the questions to last. I said foreign minister in 1956. This was replacing Moshe Sharett as foreign minister. So we're not in the 60s yet, except for 1965, which is the date of Moshe Sharett's passing. My second encounter with Moshe Sharett came in Israel, and it can be represented by one of many books published in a series called Yoman Medini. This was my bookstore shopping with an Israeli friend who was helping me pick from the shelves the kinds of reference books that would help me in my original research, looking at the primary source documents that were preciously put together between the covers of several books by Amoved publisher, and this was the records that were kept by Moshe Sharett, who was the head of the political department. At the same time as I was doing this research on the 1930s, my friend said, "Oh, look here on the bookshelf, why don't you buy this 8-volume set about the 1950s? 8 volumes. I wasn't thinking yet of researching the 1950s. And he said, "Oh, it's on sale, the price is great." So this became part of my baggage for about 10 years till I actually opened them up. And when I did open them up, and I was doing the 1950s, this became my treasure. And so I became a Sharettist through the publications of Moshe Sharett, and through one precious publication for which Yaakov Sharett is to be credited. Actually, meeting Yaakov Sharett came many years later. In November of 1998, I was introduced to Yaakov Sharett. You may not remember this particular event. It was on a sleepy 4 o'clock, congested overheated, overcrowded seminar room. I was giving a paper in a conference on international negotiation. Yaakov Sharett was sitting about the middle. Unknowing, I didn't know it was him until afterwards when my friend took the time to introduce us. Later that year, I visited Tel Aviv, and through that general introduction, I ended up visiting with Moshe Sharett in the modest Tel Aviv apartment where Moshe Sharett Heritage Society is housed. And not only is it ironic that Ben-Gurion University is sponsoring a Moshe Sharett speaker, but the boulevard on which they live is called Sderot Ben-Gurion. So we made our acquaintance, and my first visit was to number 30 Sderot Ben-Gurion. I was drinking in his amazing library with my eyes, sipping tea, eating cookies, and we talked for hours, and I felt I had found a kindred spirit, someone who shared my passion for history, for accuracy, and for historical detail. During our first meeting, I poured out my admiration for his father's Yoman, which had proved invaluable to my own research, and I asked him a question that other people had asked and that other people would continue to ask me for many years after. And that was, why wasn't it published in English? And the answer came back very simple: money. We don't have enough money for it. And he asked me as leaving if I would be interested in working on it if they got text sent in primitive word perfect files. It had been translated roughly, it had not been edited, and it was ready for somebody to start working on it. I thought this would be a 2-year project. That was 16 years ago. And we're happy to announce today that it's a few months or a year away from publication. We have created an English version with special attention to what the English-speaking reader would need to know and want to know, and eliminating some of the things that we think that only local Hebrew-speaking readers would be interested in. So, at last, after me visiting him several times, besides the voluminous email exchange in Tel Aviv several times, I'm so pleased that this event allows me to receive Yaakov Sharett visiting me in Montreal. Bad weather, but here he is. Working on the diary really helped me develop an appreciation for a moderate Sharettist. I say this word moderate because I didn't become a wild and crazy enthusiast. I saw flaws, I saw leadership failings, I saw why some of his critics were intolerant of his ways or his approach. But in the close-up reading of this diary, which is an amazing document, I discovered a literary quality that I couldn't believe, the historical importance. Every time I review and continue the editing, which consists of many multiple passes over the same text over and over, I'm really convinced of its historic importance. Below the surface, you see a driving moral force, a devoted political leader, extraordinary talented statesman, and a very sensitive human being. In 2003, the noted Israeli journalist and author Tom Segev wrote, "The most important thing that Moshe Sharett contributed to the state is his personal diary that he wrote during his tenure as prime minister. It is difficult to overstate the importance of those 8 volumes to the study of the 1950s and to the understanding of Israeli history as a whole. This debt," Segev continued, "is one that Israel owes to his son, Yaakov. Because Yaakov had to move heaven and earth to get this thing published on his own between his father's passing in '65 and in 1978 when it finally came out, largely uncensored, and for that reason, controversial to begin with. Our guest, Yaakov Sharett, was born in Tel Aviv in 1927, the eldest son of Moshe Sharett. He's married to Rina, father of 3, grandfather of 5, great-grandfather of 7. Family reunions start tomorrow in New York. Toward the end of the Second World War, he joined with other Palestinian Jews in volunteering for the Jewish Brigade that was deployed in Europe as part of the British Army. Returning to Mandate Palestine in '46, he was a founding member of Kibbutz Hatzerim in the Negev, and he served in the Negev during Israel's War of Independence. During the 1950s, Yaakov studied at the Russian Institute of Columbia University, and he returned to Israel to work at the head office of Nativ, which is the government agency devoted to dealing with Soviet Jewry. He later enjoyed a short stint as a diplomat, serving as first secretary in the Israeli embassy in Moscow during 60 and 61, and he had the happy distinction of being declared persona non grata by the Soviet Foreign Office on charges of disseminating Zionist propaganda and spying for the CIA. By profession, Yaakov Sharett worked as a journalist, editor, and translator. From 1964 to 84, he was a member of the editorial staff of the Tel Aviv Daily Ma'ariv. And he has translated into English, from English into Hebrew, he's also done the other way, several dozen books, including classics by Isaiah Berlin, Benny Morris, Avi Schleim, Rachel Carson, Bill McGibbon, Desmond Morris, and Eric Byrne. So he's not a one-trick pony, like I am. His main vocation in life, however, has been to serve as the founder, director, senior editor, and fundraiser-in-chief of the Moshe Sharett Heritage Society. Under Yaakov Sharett's energetic leadership and editorship, the Society has published in Hebrew more than a dozen volumes of his father's letters, papers, and speeches, even a slim multilingual volume of poetry that Moshe Sharett translated. A volume devoted to Sharett's role in the German reparations controversy in the early 50s was published in Europe in an English translation. And these publications, along with the long-awaited and forthcoming English edition of the Personal Diary, form an essential part of Moshe Sharett's legacy to us all in the public service of Zionism in Israel. I put on the back table a sample of some of the publications of the Society and also an information sheet for those who would care to learn more about the society that our guest represents. So tonight, Yaakov Sharett speaks to us about that painful breakup of the Ben-Gurion-Sharett partnership that took place in 1956. And without further ado, I ask you to welcome Yaakov Sharett to speak on the rise and fall of Moshe Sharett, the war that abruptly ended the 23-year coalition between David Ben-Gurion and Moshe Sharett.
Good evening, friends. Moshe Sharett is a forgotten Israeli statesman and politician, and no wonder. Not only he died in 1965, 51 years ago, which means that most Israelis born in Israel or immigrated to, and all the more Jews and Gentiles in other countries have not a shred of reminiscences about him, much more than his political school of thought. His moderate political principles, his strong belief in Israel cannot live forever by the thought that it must constantly strive for peace, that it must abide by moral precepts, have, for better or worse, died with him. For Sharett, or Sharettism, as Chief of Staff Dayan called it, has had no inheritor or inheritance in Israel to this very day. I am therefore pleased with and privileged with the opportunity given to me tonight by the Association of American Ben-Gurion University and the Israeli Center of Studies to be here with you and tell you something about this forgotten man with some fresh insight I left since his death. I must emphasize that I call Sharett and not my father. I don't have much pretensions to be objective, but I try. So I think if I call him Sharett, it will be much better for me and for you. Also, I would like to say that I don't represent anybody by myself. I speak for myself. I belong to no organization. I hold no formal position. I am only the director of the Moshe Sharett Heritage Society, which is a very small institute. So I speak for myself, and I am responsible, and only I am responsible for what I am going to say to you. Fine. And please forgive my bit unidiomatic English. Well, since 1933, Up to 1948, Sharett was the head of the Jewish Agency Political Department. In other words, he was the foreign minister of the so-called Jewish state to be. In contrast, as a formal foreign minister of Israel, he served only half of that period, about 8 years, from 48 up to June 56, when his tenure was cut off by a stronger rival, Prime Minister Ben-Gurion. Let me begin with a few words on pre-1933 Sharett, for it is important to know how he had found himself at all in the Jewish Agency Political Department and the Jewish Agency Executive. I must apologize for my brevity dictated by the shortness of time. Sharett's political life began when he joined Achdut HaAvoda, Social Democrat Party, in its foundation in 1919, about a year after he was demobilized from the Ottoman army, in which he served as an officer from 1916 till the end of the World War I. He was then 25 years old. However, one should be aware that earlier, in 1913, a short time after graduating from the Herzliya Gymnasium in Tel Aviv, where he excelled as his best students, he felt the need to continue studying and consequently went to study Ottoman law in the University of Istanbul. Nobody at the time, 1913, realized that this empire, the Ottoman Empire, will just topple down and finish 400 years of domination over the Middle East. So he went to Istanbul, like Ben-Gurion and Bensby, his friend, went to Istanbul for the same reason a year earlier. But Sharett's biography compels me even to go back a few steps even before 1950. Sharett, unlike almost all other members of Aliyah Shniya, or Second Aliyah, who came to Israel by an ideological urge to build the country, did not make Aliyah. His immigration to Palestine was not a result of some kind of personal ideological revolution, of a decision to become not only an ex-Zionist, but a worker, a laborer, a builder of Palestine, to give up life in diaspora and risk life in land inhabited by an Arab majority and ruled by Muslim empire. And while all such young immigrants of Second Aliyah, that is from 1904 to 1914, who matured in Eastern Europe, came to Palestine alone, without parents, and were immediately thrown into the hard life of manual work in the fields or in garden Jewish settlements. Sharett spent his first 2 years in the land from 1906, when he was 12 years old, to 1908 in a kind of idyllic life in an Arab village called Ein Shinya, in the mountainous area between Ramallah and Nablus in Samaria, where his father Jacob, his wife, his mother, the 5 children of the Shertoks, the Sharett, together with a married sister and a married brother, were the only Jews in this ocean of Arab farmers. Sharett was, of course, well aware of the unavoidable cruel Jewish-Arab conflict, but he never lost empathy towards the Arabs. One could say that this was unique among his party comrades, because there was no future, when he stayed in Ein Shinya, there was no school there. He worked with the Arabs, and he immediately, as he was a good linguist, imbibed the Arabic language and Arabic folklore, and when the family had to, after 2 years, lost some money and saw no future in this place because there were no Jews who were coming to that place, and the children were growing up and there was no school for them, they decided to go back to Tel Aviv. Sharett perhaps was the only one who benefited from these 2 important formative years which he lived within Arabs. Later, Jewish tourists who traveled from Haifa to Jerusalem used to tell Sharett that they passed by the village he was born in. This is what the guide would tell them when they passed near this village of Ensilia. Sharett would tell them, no, I was born in Russia, but in Ensilia I was born in you. Then, significantly, in 1956, sometime after he was dismissed or thrown out from the government, in a political talk he gave to a group of young labor activists, he said, it is beyond me why a person should live like me for 2 years secluded in an Arab village in order to feel and realize that Arabs are human beings. In this, he was unique among his friends. He was the only prime minister and foreign minister who knew Arabic well. He would listen to Arab broadcast stations all over the Middle East and would read Arab papers. This nobody else could do but him. If you compare it with Ben-Gurion, he came to Palestine already when he was 20 years old. He was 8 years older than Sharett. He matured in Poland. He became a Zionist kind of leader already in Poland before he came to Israel. And when he came to Israel, I think the second year or the third year he spent was in Galilee, where he was a guardsman, and where one of his friends was killed by Arabs before his eyes. So the first impression of these two people were totally different. Sharett had not experienced manual work like his friends in the past. He never held a hoe in his head. And significantly, he has not gone through the various hardship of acclimatizing in the new land in like Congress, who used to call him and his secondary school mates in some denigration the gymnasists. Naturally, he didn't belong to any group of workers or party members based on collective experience. He was very much different. His advancing upward in his party was not a result of manipulation, of using contacts of elbows as being member of some group. He advanced on the wheels of his own abilities. This is very significant about his friend, because he never fought for a position. After joining Achdut Avoda party, Sharett soon joined up with Berl Katznelson, one of the most important leaders of the Achdut Avoda, and helped him in editing the party's weekly. And immediately proved himself as an editor, as a writer, as a translator of material from Arabic and English into this periodical, and it was very much appreciated for that. But he wouldn't stay there. He wanted to continue his academic studying. But instead of going now to Constantinople or Istanbul as the capital of the old Ottoman Empire, he went now to the capital of the new empire, dominating Israel, which was London. So in 21 he went to London and studied there in London School of Economics for 5 years. In 1925, without any plan how he is going to go on and make a living, and what he is going to do in Israel, the push for his new upward advancing came from the outside. Again, it's very significant for his whole life. It was Berl Katznelson who asked him to come over immediately to Palestine because there was a decision by his party and the Histadrut, the labor organization, to publish a daily called Dabar. And Berl Katznelson said that he wouldn't be able to take this on his shoulders, this important position without Sharett. He needs Sharett. So Sharett immediately came back to Palestine and joined Berl Katznelson in this work. And he worked for several years as a sub-editor of this paper, until in 1931, again, as a result of an outside demand, he moved upwards. This was because the party won the elections for the Zionist World Congress. It was because, owing to this victory, it received the position of the head of the political department of the Jewish Agency. This important position was given to one of the main leaders of the party, called Chaim Arlozorov. And Arlozorov says, I need Sharett at my side, because I'm only 5 years in the country, I don't know much about Arab, I don't know much all around the country. Sharett knows everything. Sharett is almost born here. And he, of course, dominates English and Arabic, Turkish. He knows his whereabouts. So I need it. Berel Katznelson opposed the movements of moving of Sharett into Jerusalem because they said, the bar will be weakened. We need you here. And there was a big fight, significant fight between Berel Katznelson and his friend Ben-Gurion. Where would Sharett go? Should he stay in the bar as a journalist, or should he go and be the right hand of Abruptly? And very interesting is that the fact is that Sharett stood aside. He didn't join no Katznelson nor Ben-Gurion. So the party will decide my future. I will do whatever you decide. He didn't take part. And there was a big fight, and Ben-Gurion won. And Sharett became the right hand of Arlozorov in 1931. He moved to Jerusalem, left the bar, and the bar indeed went down before the Knesset. And some say that Berel Katznelson never forgot his treason to Torah. Anyway, in 2 years, Arlozorov was murdered or assassinated. This is a question that has not been solved to this very day. Was it an assassination or a murder? A accidental murder. And the question was, who is going to replace him? Again, Sharett was there, and quite naturally, he became the inheritor of Arlozorov. Still, at that time, Ben-Gurion was, of course, the senior leader of the party, so there was a kind of a cooperation between Ben-Gurion and Sharett in leading the Jewish Agency political department. But while Ben-Gurion at the time was still the secretary of the Histadrut, of the labor union, Sharett was in Jerusalem, so he did the daily work was on his shoulder, not on Ben-Gurion. In 1935, Ben-Gurion was elected into the Jewish Agency executive, Sharett was too, and then from 1935 onward until 48, until the establishment of the state, they cooperated in leading the political front of the Jewish Agency. They mostly worked together quite harmoniously. But we are different people altogether. I will not go into the difference of character, but they are totally different people. But they managed somehow to get along. But still, there were some occasional clashes between these two people. Just to give you one example or two. In 1942, when Weizmann, we should also remember that there was a third man to the leadership of the Zionist organization, which Chaim Weizmann was stationed in London. And there was a problem, because Weizmann and Ben-Gurion didn't get along together. And Sharett was in between, and he had to sometimes to mediate between the two. And once, several times, he joined Weizmann against Ben-Gurion, and several times he joined Ben-Gurion against Weizmann. So he antagonized both. And in 1942, Weizmann happened to be in Washington. Sharett was on a mission to London, and Weizmann sent a cable, more than one cable, to Sharett in London. I need you beside me because I'm now going into negotiations sponsored by the State Department in Washington with a fellow named John Philby, who was then the advisor of King Saud, and he came with some dangerous idea of the Zionists paying money to Ibn Saud, the king Ibn Saud, and for some support of Ibn Saud to the Zionist organization. This was a very shady deal, and Weizmann needed Sharett, who really came to Washington and helped him to get away from this negotiation. But Sharett knew very well that this Ben-Gurion considers Weizmann his enemy. If he goes to Weizmann and accepts his invitation, he will be a traitor, kind of a treason to him. So he was very much anxious that Ben-Gurion would take it easy. And he cabled Kasnelson, who was alive at that time, please convince Ben-Gurion that my journey to America is okay. I don't know if Beryl Kasnelson did something or not. Anyway, we know that Sharett went to Washington, and he wrote in his diary that he really saved Weizmann for a big, bad, serious crisis. And he went back to Palestine. When he came to Palestine, entered into the Jewish Agency office, Ben-Gurion stopped talking with him and started communicating with him by small pieces of paper, writing Shartov. You should know that all the time they called each other David and Moshe. By the way, people called Sharett Moshe, not Shartov. He was too friendly for people to say Shartov to him. There was no distance between him and others. While all called Ben-Gurion, Ben-Gurion. There were only two people in Israel, in Palestine, who called Ben-Gurion David. So his wife, Paula, and Moshe Sharett. Now Ben-Gurion stopped talking with Sharett, and instead communicated with him by small pieces of paper, written to Shartov. Took 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, Sharett exploded, came up to Ben-Gurion and said, we cannot work. We are working on the same floor of the Jewish Agency building. We are meeting today. We are meeting daily. We are doing business together. I cannot go alone. We cannot work like that. And Ben-Gurion from that day returned to call Sharett Moshe. And Sharett was very pleased. But he said, he wrote in his diary, like sometimes it happens that there is a very precious alabaster utensil in a family, and it passes from generation to generation. And once something happened, it fell down and was a crack in this utensil. But they keep it because it's precious to the memory of past generations. The same happened to my relationship with Ben-Gurion. We are keeping relationship, but there is a crack. And this stays forever. Another situation, not an example, was when the Anglo-American Investigation Committee came to Palestine in 1946, I said, and Ben-Gurion, for some reason, proposed that the Jewish Agency doesn't give evidence to this important commission. This was against the principle of Sharett, who said we always have to negotiate. We have nothing to lose by negotiation. If negotiations go wrong, we can stop negotiating. But we must always come to terms, try to come to terms with the other side. So we must give evidence to this committee. Ben-Gurion wouldn't budge. So it was brought to three committees, important committees. One was in the Jewish Agency Executive, another in another organization, in the party one, and in all of these institutions, the majority was with Sharett and not with Ben-Gurion. Ben-Gurion succumbed. And he himself, and Sharett said it, he gave a wonderful speech to the committee, but he never forgave Sharett for coercing him to do it. This is just two examples of the whole thing. But generally speaking, in the period of the British mandate, they got together. They got all together. They could work together because there was one big aim which united them to buttress the Jewish community, to make it a viable community ready to achieve sovereignty, This was a big aim, and they shared this aim. So they toned down those clashes which they had, and Sharett speaks about these clashes in his diary, while not enumerating them one by one, but he said there were clashes, and always Baron Nelson or other would come and mediate between them. So there was a tension, but they overcame it. Now, in the period of Sharett being the head of the political department of the Jewish Agency, he had several achievements. But I will just enumerate them. One was the very building of the political department, getting people to serve in this department. And he was very successful in organizing a small unit of people who worked like a family. And these people whom he succeeded in bringing into the political department stayed with him later after the state was established in the Foreign Office. And as long as Sharett worked as foreign minister, the group of these people maintained an intimate relationship like in a family. Sharett knew the names of everybody, of the wives, of the children. They were always getting together. So this one was successful. Another success was the intimate relationship Sharett succeeded in establishing with a High Commissioner Yaakov, who was more pro-Jewish than pro-Arab. And in his time, the number of immigrants, especially from Germany, grew up. About 60,000 German Jews came to Palestine. And it changed the whole position of the Jewish community. This was a great achievement. Then, when the Arab revolt started, the so-called disturbances of 1936 to 39, there was a problem of establishing new settlements all over the area, especially in the borders, in the borders area. This could not be done without the British. The British were the ruling power in Palestine. So the question was, on one hand, to fight with the British, and in one to cooperate with them, and receive their help to establish these communities, these new kibbutzim all around the country. A very important achievement. He was, and maybe this was one of his most important achievements, he was the father of recruiting Palestinian Jews to the British Army in order to fight the German Nazi machine. There were parties in Palestine at the time who were against any recruiting to the British Army. In the left, they said that this is when Russia was still not involved in the war, that this is a colonialist war, imperial war, we don't have to have anything to do with that. Then either right, they said that Britain is our enemy, how can we fight with them? Well, Sharett insisted that as long as there is a war and the Germans are fighting, discriminating the Jewish people, we must fight with the British. And it is thanks to his efforts that there was a Jewish unit with a Jewish flag fighting as Jews in a small segment of the France in northern Israel. Not only that, it is thanks to the presence of thousands of the Palestinian Jews in Italy, North Italy, that they could get in touch with the Holocaust survivors, organize them, take them in their cars down to the ports in Italy and France in order so that they can emigrate illegally to Palestine. Without the brigade, this could not be done. It is only through the presence of these people. Well, of course, when Sharett asked Israeli Palestinian Jews to join the army, he didn't realize that this meeting with the survivors would happen, but it so happened. And of course, the most important achievement of Sharett as a head of the Jewish Agency political department was the achievement of the 1929 decision, November 1947, at the UN to partition Israel into two states, Israel and Arab. This is his most important achievement. But I must say, and I cannot elaborate on it, this historic achievement of the United Nations deciding that the Jews are entitled to have a state of their own in Palestine was almost completely forgotten and shadowed by the war of 48-49, which was won by the Israelis and gave us Israel. Without this war, without this victory, of course, no United Nations decision would help us. But it was the decision that made it possible to pronounce the state. And Ben-Gurion usually minimized this achievement at the UN. He wanted to stress the might of the Jewish people, the use of force of the Jewish people, without which nothing could be achieved. And he was right in that. And Sharett himself didn't argue about Ben-Gurion's achievement. He had Ben-Gurion as the first and foremost leader who, thanks to him, the state was established. But he said the UN also had a person. Give you an example. When the war was over, the problem was what kind of relationship Israel would have with its neighbors. It was only due to the United Nations. That's through a mediator, which was sent by the United Nations, but by the Security Council to Palestine, that some negotiations started between Israel and all its four neighbors who fought with her. And under this mediation, armistice agreements were signed between Israel and its four neighbors. And in these agreements, the Arab country states, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, and Egypt, acknowledged the fact that during this war, Israel occupied territory beyond the borders allotted to it by the United Nations. Because the United Nations gave Israel 55% of the country and left the Arab 45%. Now, as a result of the war, Israel grew into 80% of the Palestine area, and the Arabs got only 20. And the Arab acknowledges, Arab states, and the United and then acknowledges. And Israel was not asked by the United Nations to go back to its former border, allotted by the 29th November decision, because it was the Arabs who defied the United Nations relationship decision. So this is, you cannot just say that the United Nations is nothing. Then, of course, there were other instances where Israel needed the mediation of the United Nations. I would not go into that. Now the state was established. And now the big aim was achieved. And since the big aim which connected Ben-Gurion and Sharett was achieved, the differences now grew instead of going down, of vanishing. And the question was very simple. It was a question which has arisen due to the fact that around 700,000 Palestinians fled or were expelled from the area dominated by the IDF. Now these refugees didn't vanish into the air. They stayed along the borders. Sometimes they saw their fields and saw their empty villages which they left just the other day, and they were hungry and they were destitute, and they started infiltrating into their homes, stealing vegetables, stealing grain, stealing utensils, stealing furniture for their own, because they had nothing to subsist with. Israel couldn't stand it, because if this infiltration would go on, they would inhabit, the refugees would inhabit their former villages. So there was a movement of sealing the border against this kind of infiltration, which was called economic infiltration. You cannot seal the border. The borders were empty, were still not settled. You can't put a soldier on every field along the border. So what do? There was an order, shoot to kill. Whoever is crossing the border day or night should be killed on the spot, should be shot. Be it an old man, a women, or children. And this is what happened. Now there was always, like in every instance in our life, there was a reaction. And the infiltrators started coming in armed, and they would shoot against the Israeli soldiers. And clashes started, and people were killed, Jews and Arabs as well. So how do you stop that? This, and I cannot elaborate, created a whole system of retaliation, of reprisals. If there is some terrorist act by infiltrators who kill a Jew inside Israel, Israel must strike back and make the Arabs responsible for what they are doing. And in this question of reprisals, the rift between Ben-Gurion and Sharett became very, very acute, because Ben-Gurion said we must show them that we are stronger and keep 10 minutes. And keep them down. Show them that we are stronger, they will not be able to do anything for us. While Sharett said, the more we shoot them, the more we kill them, the more repress we do them, the peace with which at the end of it we want to get, the peace will not be achieved, because the enmity and vengeance and the hatred would revive itself by every hit, every strike which we do against each other. And in this clash between these two people, the Ben-Gurion, who headed, of course, the military establishment of Israel, which was the defense establishment, was the most important establishment in the country, wanted this. And it's a certain day, I make it now shorten my talk, Ben-Gurion decided that he had to get rid of Sharett. Why? Because there were several instances in which Ben-Gurion came to the government, to the cabinet, and said there was here and here, this place some kind of terrorist Arab, Palestinian terrorist act against Israelis, and 2 people killed here, 2 people killed, 1 people killed here. We must retaliate. And Sharett says, no, let's not exacerbate the situation. The time now is not right for this. We shouldn't do it, because it only revive enmity. And in many cases, Sharett won the majority in the cabinet. Ben-Gurion didn't like it, and I can understand it. That Sharett can convince the majority of ministers against a plan of reprisal against any Arab state. And this happened time and again. There was a special issue when, in I think it was February 1955, Ben-Gurion came already with the chief of staff Dayan, with maps, everything was organized. He proposed to occupy the Gaza Strip and expel the Egyptian army from Egypt. Sharett said, let us not vote for, let us not vote about this reprisal. Let us vote if we want war or not, because it's not simply expelling the Egyptian army from the, do you think that the Egyptian wouldn't react? If we start to expel the Egyptian army from the state, the war would be erupted. So we have to decide now if we want war, not if we want Gaza. And the majority want with each other. There are other instances of it. Now, according in a response to several Israeli reprisals in which tens and dozens of Egyptian soldiers were killed inside Gaza Strip by Israeli units who crossed the border into Gaza. As a result, some say this is doubtful. There is an argument about among historians, but the one, the bright day, Nasser made a special agreement with the Soviet Union. It was called the Czechoslovakian-Egyptian weapon arms deal, in which the Soviets, indeed, not the Czechoslovakian state, gave the Egyptians a big amount of modern weapons, starting from planes, submarines, guns, etc., everything. The Israelis came into panic. What are we going to do if the Egyptians receive all these weapons, if they absorb them and learn from Soviet instructors how to use them? They will still simply march on northward into Israel. Nobody would be able to stop them. So the solution for this problem was that we Israelis should strike first. Before the Egyptians master the new weapon. Again, this created a rift between Ben-Gurion and Sharett. And Ben-Gurion, I think, logically, said to himself, if we want to have this kind of, what they call it, preemptive strike or preventive war against Nasser Egypt, if I bring it to the cabinet, Sharett may raise his head. He says, I have several ideas against this plan, and he might would win the majority of the ministers. Ben-Gurion rationally said, I cannot risk this important thing that I think would save Israel from extinction, to the possibility that Sharett would break up, put my position away. So the solution was to get rid of Sharett from the cabinet. Now, Ben-Gurion never said to nobody the reason he wanted to get rid of Sharett. He just said to his secretary at the time, who later became Israel's 5th president, Yitzhak Nahon, you go now to the party and tell them it's either me or Sharett. And there was a central committee of the party was convened, and the majority was against Sharett and for Ben-Gurion, because Ben-Gurion was the most important leader, and Sharett acknowledged it. And Sharett left the government. In a letter, he wrote to Abba Ibn, the ambassador in Washington. He said, in so many words. You will probably ask me why I have not fought for my position against Ben-Gurion decision. I have two answers to this question, serious question. There is a simple answer and there is a complicated answer. The simple answer is that I am not a fighter for a position or a statue. I never did it, I will never do it again. I received what the party gave me, according to my ability. But I didn't fight. I didn't use my elbows to fight. This is the simple. The complicated one is that if I win in the argument, like I won in other instances, in the cabinet, if I win now in the party, Ben-Gurion will leave. But my government would not remain for a long time in office, because the party would be split. Ben-Gurion from Sde from his retreat would fight me, and the whole country would be embroiled in some crisis which can destroy us. So it's better for me to leave and not fight. And he left. This is not the end of the story. Because Sharett, once he left the country, the government, he became an unemployed fellow. He was sitting in his home in Talbia, in the Talbia, in Balfour Street. Shikora, his wife, would bring him tea in the morning. He would read Jerusalem Post, Haaretz, Damar, the paper, and then nothing. Nobody would come to him. He was already not a center of power. He was left alone. He had nothing to do. This was quite a tragedy for him. Well, if you go into politics, there is an occupational risk that one day you find yourself out. And I think he was wise enough to realize that it kept happening to him too. And he did what he did. But still, he was unemployed. He had nothing to do. Suddenly came somebody from the foreign affairs and said, we have an idea. You have nothing to do. We will send you as a special emissary to 10 Asian states, starting from Japan westward until India. And you make good officers for Israel, convince them to establish diplomatic relations with us, prove to the Arabs that we are here to stay, while by recognizing us. And Sharett jumped on this idea, even though he was represented in a government with which he was not for, just because he was simply unemployed. Very, very, very simple. So he went and had a very real success in his visits. And his last visit was to Prime Minister Nehru in New Delhi. And the morning he was about to come to, invited over to the president, to the Prime Minister's office, and a limousine of Nehru was already waiting outside his hotel. When he passed by, he said, read in the papers, a big caption all along the width of the paper: Israel invaded Egypt. He had nothing to. He had no idea of this possibility at all. He was not informed, and he wanted to convince Nehru that once India establishes diplomatic relations with Israel, this would be the last reason for Nasser to realize that Israel is there to stay. As Nasser, as you know, Mr. Nehru is threatening us with war. But what happened? Nasser became the victim, and Israel was the aggressor. So Sharett was brought himself in a terrible situation. He had to vindicate Israel while being against it, because he was against war. Well, he found a way. He was quite a wise diplomat. He found a way how to manage But he came back to Israel shattered. And he said, my country has left me. And in his diary, and I will finish with this, I have another minute, maybe. After the Sinai War erupted, he had an argument with a friend in New Delhi. His friend justified Israel's move against us. And he said to him, if that's the situation, then we have nothing to lose. And we should do well to act crazy. Let the world know to what extremes we have been driven, said this friend to Sharett, justifying the invasion. I said that this logic left me cold. If we are to act crazy, the world will perceive us as lunatics and treat us accordingly. The world has no obligation to guarantee a secure existence to lunatics. By acting crazy, we are cutting off the branch on which we are perching. This was Sharett, but he was wrong. Israel acted crazy maybe, but the Sinai campaign was a lot of achievement to Israel. And Sharett at that moment felt that he had lost completely his case of mediation, his case of being ready for compromises is lost. The strong-head policy had the victory. He indeed left the arena. Now the question is, which everybody should ask himself, is, was Sharett ultimately right or wrong? Is the world going to, or the nations, or I don't know who, treat us at long last as crazy, or accept Israel as it is, occupying another country, occupying another people, etc., etc. Now, whoever among us is happy, is satisfied with the road Israel has taken since the 1956 war, the 1967 war, the 1973 war, the war afterwards, the Intifada, the bloodshed, the conflagration, the attacks against the Gaza Strip, and this going now with the stabbings. If one is satisfied with it, they say, okay, but we are still surviving. Let it be blessed. However, those among us, I think, who feel uneasy with this kind of Israel living on the throne constantly, perhaps forever, those who are among us, who are uneasy about and anxious about the future awaiting the children, grandchildren, in this terrible, in this most complicated area called Israel or Middle East. Those people, I think, should or may lament the lacking of some of the wisdom of Moshe Sharett. Thank you. I filled all the blanks which I
Dr. Avi Barelli, may we invite you up?
Hello everybody. I'm here from the opposition. I beg to differ. I was invited here that Canada disagrees. And I thank Shabba, Elaine, and Neil for inviting me here. Now I have only 15 minutes. It's a long story. And you know Yaakov didn't finish his job. I want either. So I'm jumping right into the water. A few facts to begin with. At September 21st, 1955, the Czech-Egyptian arms deal was achieved between the Soviets and the Nasser regime. Now, it included 150 advanced jets, MiG-15, 50 long-range bombers, Ilyushin 28, 230 tanks, and hundreds of tanks. This was huge arms deal. The connection between this arms deal and the retaliation operations is dubious. I don't think that there is a real counter argument. Really. Now, the weak and small Israeli Air Force and the entire IDF of that time had no answer to those jets and bombers. Nothing that could stop the jets and the bombers coming into Tel Aviv. That was the situation. That was the situation that Ben-Gurion returned, in which Ben-Gurion returned to the office of the Prime Minister. After he returned the Defense Ministry in the last phase of Sharett's short-time term in the Prime Minister office. Now, in January the 1st, 1956, Ben-Gurion is saying to his cabinet, and this is my translation, you must forgive me for my poor translation, my poor English. The state of Israel faces a danger of war that can be even more tough and severe than the War of Independence. It's a closed discussion, of course, within the cabinet. It's specified in this meeting the massive supplies of weapons to Egypt, the developing military coordination of Arab states under Nasser's leadership, and its practical manifestation of this coordination in terrorist attacks, not only from Egypt, but all around Israel. Nasser's aggressive rhetoric, such as his statement that he will meet the Syrian army on the ruins of Israel. Now, a couple of weeks later, January the 15th, his diagnosis became even more frightening. He said to his cabinet, and this is also my translation, forgive me, I am positively certain that the Egyptian government is planning to destroy Israel by military attack. I have no shred of doubt about it, based on conversations with Englishmen and Americans that were coming from meetings in Egypt. So, what about Sharett? Well, contrary to the spirit we've heard before, he shared fully Ben-Gurion's diagnosis. He offered no other interpretation in the government meeting, no other interpretation to Egypt's behavior, to Egypt's plans and deeds and rhetorics. Now, these are the facts I want to start with. I want to begin with 2 points in my discussion. From the end of 1955 until Sharett was driven to resign from government in June 19th, 1956. These are 8 months, 8 long months that Sharett was again foreign minister under the old new Prime Minister Ben-Gurion, after serving as defense minister short time before, under Sharett. Okay? Now, during and I'm talking about after the Czech Egyptian arms deal. during all those 8 months, Ben-Gurion rejected, contrary to what we had before, Ben-Gurion rejected Moshe Dayan's and Shimon Peres' proposal to attack Egypt in a preemptive war. Rejected. It was only after Peres succeeded in tying France and Israel in an alliance that neutralized the Egyptian air supremacy, and both Israel and France managed to add Britain to the alliance. It was only then, and only then, after Sharett was out of office, long after Sharett was out of office, only then that Ben-Gurion decided to engage in a preemptive war. Only then. That is why Ben-Gurion never, ever, in all the occasions I checked, never explained Sharett's dismissal or removal, you call it as dismissal of the government, never explained it with him being able or not able, being able to convince the government to attack Egypt.
Did you explain it at all?
He explained it a lot of times. I'm not sure that all the explanations were correct, but this is not I'm not sure at all. I think much of them are not correct. Okay? But this is not my point. My point is he was not in a good position when he was asked why he dismissed Sharett. This was an aggressive act by Ben-Gurion. Now he could easily say, I had to. Otherwise, he would, as Yaakov said, he would convince the government not attacking Israel and endangering Israel. He never said it. Why? Because it is not the case. Because what I've told you before, he didn't agree for preemptive war long before Sharett was dismissed from office. That's a second point. This is a very important point here. But now a second point. After the war, in which Israel succeeded, as Yaakov said, succeeded to avoid the frightening perspectives both Sharett, and I repeat, both Sharett and Ben-Gurion saw coming from the west, from Egypt, and not only succeeded in avoiding this frightening perspective, but established a situation whereby the Egyptian army is out of Sinai, effectively, for the long period up until the 6 Days War. In fact, the 6 Days War began because the Egyptians re-entered into Sinai.
Why did they enter?
Just a moment. Now, after the war, for a moment, Sharett, in the same personal diary we talked about, admitted bluntly, in his frank way. That is why this diary is so important. I agree, it's very important. We are all in debt to Yaakov Sharett. He earned the esteem of all of us for this, for its publication. Now he admits there that maybe he says, they were right, meaning Ben-Gurion, Peres and Dayan, meaning Peres and Dayan alone, I don't know. They were right. And he keeps saying, admit they were right, admit it goes along, it succeeded, admit you were wrong. In his personal diary, now why he's writing this? Why? Because it was a major disagreement, but it was a tactical disagreement about what would happen in this or that circumstances. He didn't change his worldview. He changed his, he understood for a moment, admitted between himself in a private diary, that his prognosis was wrong. Now, if Sharett, I want to move because I have to fast forward. If Sharett is the father of the Israeli political moderation, as was said at the end of Yaakov's very interesting lecture here, and this is said in the context of his severe personal conflict with Ben-Gurion, if that, then must not be Ben-Gurion the extremist, the father of the Israeli political extremism, the father of the occupation, the father of the Six-Day War. He was not the prime minister back then. Now, my time is short, so I will lay down only two assumptions here in order to deal with this kind of argument. And I will conduct a limited discussion about them if you will allow me. Spare me a few minutes. The first is the first point I want to say here is that the conflict between those two very important persons in our history was primarily personal. That's one assumption I want to lay down here. Primarily personal. The second is that they are not representing two schools in the Israeli diplomacy and strategic thought, but rather belong to the same school. Now, I don't like personal history. That's not what I'm doing here, but I have to. I have to because if I want to say that they are not they are not representing two schools, so why Sharett was dismissed from government? He was dismissed from the government because the two couldn't work together. Now, Sharett and Ben-Gurion were not. Sharett was a remarkable personality, highly gifted person. I don't have to be his son to know it. Everybody that look into his historical deeds can hardly miss it. But they were not equal. Ben-Gurion, as we all know, was much more senior than Sharett in all respects. By the way, Yaakov, there was no chance at all that the party would split over vis-a-vis the Egyptian threat. When Ben-Gurion is saying as if Ben-Gurion would say, let's go to war, and Sharett said, no, don't go, and Mapai would split. This is an imagination of Moshe Sharett in later days. They were not equal. Ben-Gurion resigned from the government in December 1953. He expressed, when he did it, he expressed publicly that he didn't wish that Sharett would replace him in the PM office. He wanted Eshkol, he wanted Golda, he wanted everyone, not Sharett. But Mapai, the party, both decided that Sharett would be the successor. Okay? Now, another thing, Ben-Gurion returns to the government under Sharett as prime minister to replace Pinchas Lavon in order to never mind. I don't want to. It's a long story. Now, Sharett's government collapsed after less than 1 year and a half. Sharett was not. Now, after Sharett was any problems?
We're deciding on the strategy for rebuttal. Actually, just the logistics, not the strategy, just the logistics.
Let me complete.
Yes, of course.
Now, the second, it goes on, and Sharett's government collapsed after less than 1.5 years. And after that, Sharett was not conceived as, Sharett was not conceived as a success as prime minister, to say the least. And the party decided that Ben-Gurion and not Sharett would succeed, would be its candidate to be the next prime minister. Now, it is not so complicated. It's simple. I cannot think of two politicians in such context, with such a sequence that I just lay down briefly for you, that would not eventually confront each other. It's very simple. It's a personal confrontation. Now, more important. Now, this I'm saying to address the more important thing, the idea that they are both representing two political or diplomatic or strategic, diplomatic or strategic schools. One, peace-seeking, based on optimism that peace can be achieved. The other, pessimistic, weak, and relied mainly on military might and political power. Now, I disagree fundamentally that they are both, Sharett and Ben-Gurion, political realists. They share common worldview. They disagree. Their various disagreements were tactical. Look at the major historical facts here. Both supported partition ever since approximately the mid-30s. Both supported cooperation with the British during the World War II. Both supported the strategy of state now after World War II. Both supported arms, both Sharett and Ben-Gurion, not Weizmann, supported armed resistance to the British as an essential part of that strategy of state now after World War II. Both, in the same token, in the same zeal, both supported partition as an essential part of that same strategy of state now after World War II.
So this is so beautiful. Why did he get rid of Sharett? Who ended Sharett cooperation?
That was for that purpose was intended what I said about the personal relations. They could get along. But I'm saying, just a moment, Yaakov. Admittedly, Sharett was more restrained in implementing military means. We see this even before the retaliation affairs at the end of the war of independence. And they argued on retaliation operations during the early 50s. We all know this. But those were disputes on important tactical matters, important as they were. Strategically, they were close to each other in the basic idea that Israel must struggle to keep its territorial gains after 1948 and combat diplomatically, for example, the plans of the British and the Americans to tear the Negev off the Jewish state. The strategy of Israel was during the 50s, during the period they are quarreling about whether to attack or not to attack preemptive war. The strategic picture of Israel was created by them both. Ben-Gurion was more important. Ben-Gurion was more important in molding this strategy, but Sharett was a senior partner in this molding. To sum up, I'm summing up. I strongly feel
I'm still feeling it. And thinking. Maybe my thoughts are not strong. My feelings are strong. I strongly feel that we are confusing here quite different periods when we try to make Sharett the father of what is called, in a misguided way, the peace camp in Israel, in present-day Israel. By the way, Ben-Gurion is being also drafted to the peace camp occasionally. In some respect, it is true of them both, considering their consistent support of partition. However, the Israeli right wing can also claim connection to their school of thought if we are thinking about their realist, strong, both realist, strong tendency. More important, though, is for us to understand the political affinity between the two, above and beyond their cause. Thank you.
Don't leave this place before being convinced that there is an answer to every argument. I will not go into it. All I want to say is that I have an answer to everyone. But there is a very small word, or one syllable, which we cannot live without it, without using it, which we need it for every plan we're doing, for planning, for every decision we are making. But it exists only at present and in future. This word doesn't exist in the past. And this word, one syllable word, is if. Now, history is not a laboratory. We cannot put into this laboratory an experiment and say, what would happen if Sharett stayed? We know that things would be different, but we don't know if they were better or worse. But it would be different. Now, it is very easy, I believe, you believe me, to be identified with a victor. History goes with a victor and is written by the victor. And I belong to the minority. And I think that the decision was bad. But I don't ignore the benefits of this victory of the Israeli campaign, which Sharett also agreed. But he didn't change his mind about Israel being a moral state. And if we lose our moral standing, we are losing the very essence of our existence. Because Sharett succeeded in convincing nations to vote for partition on moral grounds, not on power grounds. And if we lose this, in the long run, we will lose our soul. This is what Sharett said. And to this day, we see that Israel is losing its moral ground. If you don't agree with me, come to Israel and see what's going on there in the territory. I wish I had another 2 hours to tell you what I think. There are many principal facts which I didn't touch with, and the same as like the collusion with the French and the British and the resulting of it, and many other things, and the fact that owing, and I say it in a very straightforward word, as a result of this war, Israel became a quasi-member of the nuclear club. So far, this weapon of mass destruction, which we, Israel, were the first to introduce into the Middle East, so far it didn't prevent all the wars which came after the Sinai victory. We had really 10 years of peace, but then the war started again all over again. and we are still there. Very good friend with Avi, and we continue to.
I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Chava Nicolai.
Thanks very much, Elaine. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for bearing with us so patiently and following along with this very nice, very lively and heated exchange. Now, I have two duties. One is to offer closing remarks, which I was hoping and planning to do in a substantive way. I will say about that in a few minutes. But my other duty is also to moderate the Q&A, because we certainly want to make sure that before you would all rush to the refreshments table, to the sweets table, you would also have an opportunity to engage directly the speakers and members of this panel. But we are running late, so I'm going to keep my closing remarks very, very short. And in fact, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to outline some of the chapter headings and the main points that I could have engaged if I had more time than I do now. And if you are interested in my more substantive views and some of the answers to the questions that I'm going to posit in the next couple of minutes, please come back on Wednesday when we have another supposedly interesting event at the Brafman building, and Jennifer has always prepared the flyers already. The event is not actually about Moshe Sharett and his political views and his term in office. It's more about political parties, but it is within that context that I actually want to suggest a very important puzzle about Moshe Sharett and about some of the episodes in his life that were glossed over in the last hour and a half. Avi touched on it more than Kobe, but there's a very important puzzle, of course, in Moshe Sharett's life and political career. And that is the following. You have a major Zionist leader, whom Kobe described as one of the members of the triumvirate, of the Zionist triumvirate, next to Weizmann and Ben-Gurion. He has an established record as a great diplomat, a great foreign service professional, and a leader of the foreign service, the first prime minister, the first foreign minister of the newly created state. And then, after the second Knesset election, he actually gets the opportunity to be at the very top. Ben-Gurion, after having led two coalition governments in the second Knesset, decides to retire, and Sharett has the opportunity to actually shape the contours, not just of the country's foreign policy, but the entire political course of Israeli life and Israeli politics according to his vision. And for various reasons, in different ways that, as we heard from our speakers, that doesn't get to happen. And that's a very important puzzle to understand. Why? This is not a political novice that we are talking about, a very trained, very skillful, a very well-known politician, well-known inside, domestically, in the Zionist movement, but also internationally with great political assets. Once he gets to the top, he leads two more governments in a very short period of time. As Avi mentioned, shortly over and then a year and a half, his second coalition government also ends. And new elections are called. Ben-Gurion comes back, once again leads the Mapai list, and continues to serve for a very long period of time in office. Now, there are different answers and different places where one can start looking for answers to this question, how this could happen. I think there are analytically two interesting ways of tackling this. One is to ask whether there were choices that Sharett could have taken as prime minister that could have allowed him to be more successful and longer lasting in that office than he actually turned out to be. And I will just suggest a couple in that regard. The other is that perhaps there were more systemic and systematic forces at work that would have prevented anybody, not just Sharett, from actually serving or staying alive politically at the top for a shorter period of time as he did. Now let me just suggest some possibilities about the choices that he could have taken, and these are choices that some of the later prime ministers actually, and certainly if we look at some of the more contemporary prime ministers and heads of government in Israel, we see actually do take them. One is, Sharett inherited a coalition government from Ben-Gurion. This was not a coalition government that he himself led negotiating as it was being formed. The first coalition that after the 51 election Ben-Gurion forms was a very complex coalition, including the two Mizrahi parties, the two ultra-Orthodox Aguda, al-Huda, and also the three small Arab parties. Eventually, the coalition gets changed when Ben-Gurion sacks the two ultra-Orthodox parties, and the smaller liberal parties, the progressives and the general Zionists, start being brought in. But this is not a coalition that Sharett himself built. But when he becomes prime minister, not leader of the party, but head of the government, he has an opportunity, and this is something that we do see successive and later prime ministers take advantage of. He has an opportunity to actually revisit the coalition agreement and see whether this is a coalition that he actually wants to continue living with. The choice he made was yes, he continues with the coalition until the coalition actually hits the crisis in connection with the Kastner trial, and he has to make a change. He selects the general Zionist, and there is a coalition crisis at his hand. But that was one opportunity, a missed opportunity that perhaps didn't have to be missed. Another one, of course, could have been taking or insisting within the party that when Ben-Gurion decides to retire to Sde-Boker, he should retire from the Knesset as well. But Ben-Gurion didn't. He retained his seat in the Knesset, and of course that ensured him permanent place within the Knesset and within the party's parliamentary wing until the legislature eventually was dissolved. And the third possible opportunity that Sharett as head of government could have taken but didn't was to actually call a snap election. To actually engineer and call a new election so that he would have a fresh electoral mandate while Ben-Gurion is still in retirement in Sde-Boker. And that was something that he didn't do, that was available to him, to actually create and carve out, build a more personally based electoral support for himself. And that is in fact what distinguishes the current Israeli party system from the party system that was in place back there, and that is really the crucial systemic difference that I think, and I think that that's where the true answer to the puzzle actually lies. Today's Israeli party system is very widely and frequently described as very, very personal, almost too personalized. Whereas the nature of the party system and party politics at the time that we heard from Avi and Kobi talk about was much more institutionalized. The party mattered a whole lot more than some of the individual leaders who rise to the top, and it was ultimately the party's choice what was available and what wasn't available to its officers, including the prime minister and members of the cabinet. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if that is the case, and if indeed it was the institutionalized nature of party politics that we can hold accountable for Prime Minister Sharett not finding or not making some of the choices that could have allowed the Sharettist vision of moderation to actually become the Israeli mainstream, then perhaps it's neither Ben-Gurion nor Sharett that we need to hold as responsible for that outcome, but the party itself. And if that is the case, if the culprit is Mapai and the internal machinations of the political party, then perhaps the contemporary Israeli party system, which is so personalized, may not actually be doing so poorly, because in this contemporary context, individual leaders do have to test their own personal performance and accountability directly vis-a-vis the voters within the party, but also in front of the broader electorate more than may have been the case. So that's a whole other thesis for which there is not enough time to explore further. So without further ado, then let me bring the discussion to a close and then open up the floor to questions from the members of the audience. We have about 15 minutes that we agreed to we go to the Q&A. Jennifer, let me ask you to please bring the mic a little bit closer to the
We're asking people to just stand in line, and the panel.
Yes, Roberta.
Thank you very much. Good to see you back. Hope you're surviving your research. And I'm sure there's so many documents in Israel that you want to, just research. Thank you very much for these amazing presentations and for this very personal, incredible discussion of Moshe Sharett. How could you not be more moved? My question is very simple, and I hope the answer can be given without too many swear words. What was Moshe Sharett's opinion of John Foster Dulles? Okay. Oh. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, please allow, because we are losing a mic here.
The question was about Sharett.
Yes, what was his opinion of John Foster Dulles? Yeah. Foreign minister to foreign minister.
Dulles could be credited for the fall of Sharett. Because if the United States would give the weapons to Israel, as Sharett asked when he came to Washington in 1955 in December, and Sharett would come back to Israel empty-handed, this would prevent a war against Egypt, because Israel would feel that it is secure with American weapons, because American weapons means not only the weapons, but the support of America. And Dulles and Eisenhower didn't give it to Sharett. Now, Israel had a part in Dulles resistance. Because when Sharett was in Washington talking with Dulles about relation to Israel, he sent 2 cables to Ben-Gurion in Tel Aviv. And he said, "Dear David, please, while I am in Washington, negotiating for arms to Israel, for the IDF, please don't make any retaliation. Please prevent the IDF from doing any